Allahu, 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 Allah, Allahu, 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 Allah.
So he woke up and he could not find it anywhere, and he knew that he was doomed, and basically he accepted the fact that he was going to die out of thirst eventually. So he sat under a tree and he fell asleep while he was sitting there just waiting for death. When he woke up from the sleep, he found that his riding animal came. His camel came and was standing right on top of him. And from his happiness, he said, Allahumma anta abdi wa ana rabbuk. From his happiness, he misspoke. He said, Oh Allah, you are my slave and I am your Lord. He was so excited and so happy that he misspoke in such a way. And the Prophet ﷺ is telling us, and you can imagine this man's life was just saved. So you can imagine how happy he is. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more pleased when one of us repents than this man was pleased to find that his riding animal has returned. And if Allah wasn't loving, He wouldn't be pleased if you repent to Him or not. Not only that, but if we contemplate some other things, for example, how that you sin against Allah Azza wa Jalla, and you may not even repent from that sin, but Allah doesn't retaliate against you. He doesn't take away your eyesight, get you fired from your job the next day, you lose your home immediately. He keeps it with you. The blessings that He's given you, He keeps them with you. And you might sin against Allah again and again and again, and He never retaliates against you, never takes away your eyesight, never takes away your loved ones. Whereas this is how human beings would behave with one another. If someone let you stay in their home for free, no rent and everything, as an assistance and help to you and your family, and then you do something really nasty to them, and they're angry with you, you ask for forgiveness, okay, they forgive you. Then you do it again, and they might forgive you the second time, but don't do it again. And you do it the third time, and the fourth time, and the fifth time. What do you think will happen after a while? He's going to want to take whatever blessing He gave you away from you. So He'll tell you to get out of His house. This is how people are. But this is not how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Wadud. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is loving. And love is the basis for your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's not anything else. It's actually love. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, man yartadda minkum an dinihi, fasawfa ya'ti Allahu biqawmin yuhibbuhum wa yuhibbunahu. Ila akhir al-ayah. It's really amazing. Allah says, O you who believe, whoever of you leaves his religion, then Allah is going to replace him or bring forth another group. And what's the description of this group? That He loves and they love Him back. Notice this was the first description that was mentioned here. It wasn't that Allah mentioned that they fear Him first and then, no, that Allah loves them and they love Him back. Because this is the basis for your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But unfortunately, most people, their focus now is on fear. And in a lot of Islamic talks, and a lot of sermons, Jum'ah khutbahs, the focus is on fear. So even though the scholars liken love, hope, and fear, which they call the three pillars of worship. When you worship Allah, it's based on three things: love, hope, and fear. And they liken these three pillars to a bird. Love being the body that pushes the bird forward, and the hope and the fear being the wings that keep it balanced. And if they weren't there, or if only one was there, it wouldn't be balanced in flight. So if you have too much fear of Allah, you lose hope in His mercy. You might even give up trying to worship Him and obey and so on. And if you have too much hope, you're sure that you'll never be punished, then you're not afraid to commit what is prohibited and what is haram. So you need the two to remain balanced. But the scholars emphasize on the love, which is the body, which is the main part. The other wings are just there to keep it balanced. Hope and fear are to keep it balanced. But most people love to focus on the fear. Still focus on the fear. We had a friend of ours in the old days, and he had a famous khutbah on the hellfire. Whenever a group invited him to give him a Jum'ah khutbah, he would just fold his hellfire khutbah, put it in his pocket. That's it. He'd give him the hellfire khutbah. It scared him to death. He said one day, he's telling me, he said one day I went to a community and I gave them the hellfire khutbah. It scared the living daylights out of them. Then the imam came to me and they said the community really liked you. And we want you to come back next Friday and give us a khutbah about Jannah, paradise. He said, I looked at him and said, what khutbah about paradise? Because I just have one on fear, that's how it is. I need one on paradise, I'm just scare people. People like to focus on the fear a lot. But realistically, love is stronger than fear. Stronger than the taqwa. How? Because taqwa and having fear of Allah Azza wa Jal, what's the benefit of taqwa? What's the impact of taqwa on your life? Taqwa gets you, you know something? I don't want to sit here. Can I stand over there? Thank you. It's really boring sitting down. You guys okay? You guys look tired. Who came straight from class? Inshallah, champions. Okay. Every time I think of going back to school, I meet students during exam time and I'm like, no, forget that. Alright, we were saying the difference between love and fear, right? And we're saying that love is stronger and more impactful than fear. Because fear, what's the impact of fear on your life? Fear of Allah Azza wa Jal. It helps you stay away from the haram. Can we all agree on that? That when you fear Allah, it helps you stay away from things that are prohibited, things that are haram. But when it comes to love of Allah Azza wa Jal, that's a higher level. And that gives you the energy to do extra things. So you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you do dhikr of Allah constantly. Fear won't get you to constantly make dhikr of Allah, remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal. But love will get you to constantly make dhikr just like it's breathing, like it's no problem. Or you will pray to Allah Azza wa Jal without getting bored. Or you'll get up for qiyam at night without being tired. Why? Because you're driven by the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You go above and beyond. And that is stronger than just fear. Fear will keep you away from things that are haram, but it may not push you to do extra good deeds. But when you love Allah Azza wa Jal, that propels you forward to do extra good deeds in worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just by looking at the blessings of Allah Azza wa Jal, you naturally begin to love Allah. Because Allah Azza wa Jal gives every single one of us so many blessings that we're not able to enumerate them. We're not even able to count them out. That's how many blessings every single one of us has been given. So the scholars say when you recognize that all the blessings and every good that you have in your life comes to you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you naturally begin to love Allah Azza wa Jal. And these things follow naturally. You love Allah Azza wa Jal because you recognize all the blessings come to you from Allah Azza wa Jal. And if there was anyone in life like this, that every time they saw you, they did something good to you, you would naturally love that individual. So you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a result of recognizing the blessings come from Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you love Allah, you also naturally begin to obey Allah. And when you obey Allah, you also use the blessings that He gives you in His obedience. Because the sad thing, brothers and sisters, is that whenever we disobey Allah Azza wa Jal, we're using a great blessing that He has given us to anger Him. We're using a blessing that He gave us to disappoint Him or to disobey Him. And like I said, any other human being would not accept that. Someone donates, a huge business or company donates a lot of money to the masjid, and then the masjid takes that money and puts advertisements in the newspaper against that company. What do you think they would do? The blessing that I gave you, you're using it against me? And this is, and we don't compare Allah to His creation, but this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. He gives people blessings and they use these blessings to disobey Him. And there's no way you can disobey Allah without using some blessing that He gave you. You look at something haram, you're using the blessing of eyesight. You eavesdrop, you're using the blessing of hearing. You backbite, you lie, you're using the blessing of speech. No matter what it is, what the sin is, you're using a blessing Allah gave you to disobey Allah Azza wa Jal. And that's not from the attributes of a believer that shows gratitude towards Allah Azza wa Jal, and definitely not from the attributes of a believer who loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who will use a blessing to disobey Him constantly. So you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you submit to Allah Azza wa Jal. And many people claim that they love Allah, but they refuse to submit. So if you just wanted to look at it very simply and logically now, I claim to love Allah Azza wa Jal, but I refuse to submit to Him. So now you can answer the question for your own self. What does that say then about your love of Allah Azza wa Jal? No doubt there's some kind of problem there. And when you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's easy for you to give up things for His sake. You can give up what's haram, prohibited. You can stop doing it easily because you love Allah so much. You can give up things, even if they're not haram, things that just waste your time, they're just not good for you, you can give that up for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Sahih Ahmad, this is a Sahih hadith from the Muslim of Imam Ahmad, Abu Qatada and Abu Ad-Dahma. They met a Bedouin man. So this Bedouin man tells them that the Prophet ﷺ took me by the hand and taught me from what Allah taught him. Meaning the Prophet ﷺ taught me something from what Allah taught him. And the Prophet ﷺ says to him, إِنَّكَ لَن تَدَعَ شَيْئًا اتقاء Allah. Yani you will not leave anything out of fear of Allah, out of like your obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِلَّا أَعْطَاكَ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا مِنْهُ. Except that Allah will give you something better than that. Except that Allah will give you something better than that. There's a famous hadith that a lot of us hear, it's about, that says, مَنْ تَرَكَ شَيْئًا لِلَّهِ يعني عوضه الله وأبدله الله خيرا منه. It's weak in narration, that's why we didn't use that. Even though it's correct in meaning. You give up something for Allah, and Allah will make it up to you with something, replace it with something far better. So, the love of Allah Azza wa Jal gives you the ability to go against your lusts and your desires. I'll give you an example. There's a guy who's smoking for years, and then suddenly he comes and he stops smoking. They ask him, why did you stop smoking and how did you do it so successfully this time? Because you know smokers, they quit 1,000 times. They quit and then 2 hours later you find them smoking again. So he said, my fiance wanted me to quit smoking. So what happened in this example? He loves her so much that he gives it up for her, and he does it easily. And he was smoking for many years and couldn't give it up for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla because it's haram. So what does that say about the level of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There's a true story that happened in our times of a man and a woman, and a young man and a young woman, and they were in a haram relationship. And for 6 years this relationship is going on. And then the young man starts to become practicing, so he told her that as much as he loves her, he's going to give up this relationship for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he moves even from that city, he moves to another place and starts working at a center and being active with it and everything. But he said the entire time I was there, I always had sadness in my heart from leaving that girl because he was in love with her. So then there was a young lady there that I saw, and she was doing the Quran memorization for the women, and she herself had memorized the Quran. So at some point I figured, let me get married and also help me get over that girl. So he said, I spoke to my mother, and my mother spoke to her and everything. And when it came time to see her, she was wearing niqab, so when she uncovered her face, I found it was that same girl that I used to speak and have a relationship with for 6 years. She was moved by his statement to her, that he's giving up the relationship for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. That statement moved her, and she became practicing, and she memorized the Quran in 8 months, and moved to this place as well, and started teaching, being the Quran teacher for the women, and then of course he marries her. Now subhanAllah, if he would have remained in the haram relationship, she wouldn't have been as religious perhaps as she was now. He got her now in a much better state. And when they would ask him, like, what's the way you describe your life now? He said he was very happy with his life. So they said, how would you describe your life? And he said, the best description of my life is a verse from the Quran, in Surah Al-Nahl, verse 97, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَنْ عَمِلَ صَالِحًا مِنْ ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنْثَى. Whoever does good deeds, good work, from either male or female, وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ, while they're true believers in Allah Azza wa Jal, فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبًا. We're going to give them a gracious or a good life. وَنَجْزِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْرَهُمْ بِأَحْسَنِ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And we're going to give them the reward according to the best of what they used to do. He said, and imagine this ayah can sum up your life. He says, this is exactly how I feel about my life. This verse sums it up very nicely. So how do you behave then when you love someone or something? No doubt you talk about it all the time, true? People who like cars talk about cars. People who like games talk about games. People who like houses are always talking about houses and architecture, whatever it is. And those who love their fiancé, whatever, either way, they're always talking about the other person. You bore your friends to death about you. Nobody wants to hear it, but you still keep telling them. Those who love Allah Azza wa Jal, they can't stop mentioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They can't stop talking about Allah or making dhikr, mention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ was the best example. And even though his eyes used to sleep, he says, my eyes would fall asleep, وَلَا يَنَامُ قَلْبِي, but my heart doesn't fall asleep. So the Prophet ﷺ used to not go in complete state of unconsciousness in sleep, and his heart will always be aware of Allah Azza wa Jalla and making dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jalla. The benefits of making dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jalla is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions you. How amazing is that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. Mention me and I will mention you. But do we really feel how great that is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His greatness to be mentioning you by name? You mention Him and He will mention you. Do we really feel the greatness of that? The Prophet ﷺ went to Ubay ibn Ka'b, the companion, and he said to him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded me to recite Surah Al-Bayyinah to you. So what is Ubay ibn Ka'b? If Ubay ibn Ka'b was one of, from our time now, he would say, okay, go ahead. That's all he would say. But look what Ubay ibn Ka'b, the companion, said. قال أَوَسَمَّانِي لَكَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. Allah mentioned me by name to you, Ya Rasulullah. That was a big deal to him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from above His throne, mentioned me by name, Ya Rasulullah. And the Prophet said yes, and Ubay ibn Ka'b began to cry. Because what an honor it is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to mention. وَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. Mention me, and I will mention you. You know, if someone loves you and you love them, and you know that they love to hear something coming from you, what would you do? Constantly say it, true? Yeah? Somebody said true. So you repeat it often, won't you? Constantly repeat it. Now there's a hadith we all know. The Prophet said, كَلِمَتَانِ خَفِيفَتَانِ عَلَى اللِّسَانِ. Two words, light and easy on the tongue. حَبِيبَتَانِ إِلَى الرَّحْمَنِ. Beloved to Ar-Rahman, to Allah. And what are they? We all know it, right? Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah. These two words, nice and easy on the tongue. It's really nice and easy to say, and they're heavy on the scale in another narration, and Allah loves these words. So how often would you repeat it if you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you? You know the average person walks about 7,000 steps every day. What if you just taught yourself that if I'm walking from here to the next classroom or to the bus station, I'm just going to keep saying Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah, Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah. You might get a couple of thousand every day without even feeling it. Because what is your life? Your life is time, right? And if you look at how your life is spent, you'll be amazed at where it goes. You're going to spend about 4.3 years of your entire life driving, sitting in a car. 4.3 years inside of a car. You're going to spend 3.6 years eating. You will spend 2.5 years cooking. Okay, or eating that food for some brothers. 2.5 years in the bathroom, sitting on the toilet and brushing your teeth. It's not at the same time, of course. But maybe you should do it at the same time to save some time. Men will spend 1 year of their whole life just staring at women. Not like their wife is haram, you know what I'm talking about. All blame. Women will spend 6 months out of their lifetime staring at men. You will spend 11 years at work. 5 years sitting at your desk at work. 2 years in meetings. 2 years. Those who swear, and a lot of Muslims who swear, use swear words. It is estimated that a person who swears will use about 2 million swear words in their lifetime. 2 million. Now if you typed out 2 million swear words and printed it out and gave it to someone on paper, how thick would that look? And you know that the angels write down everything you say and everything that you do. So when your book is given to you on the day of resurrection, the swear section, how thick will it be? And if you swear, okay, we'll give Muslims a discount. You swear 1 million times. How thick, if you put out 1 million words, how thick would that be? That's just the swear section in your book. And people think it's cool and all that, they're not going to think it's cool on the day of resurrection. So, you spend 6 months out of your life standing in line at the airport, at Tim Hortons, 6 months of your life just standing in line. You'll spend 5 months of your life just complaining. Complaining, just like, we went to the restaurant one day, the food was cold and we hated it, and 5 months just complaining non-stop for 5 months. You'll spend 20 weeks of your life on hold. Could you please hold 20 weeks just waiting on hold? Listen to that ridiculous, horrendously horrible music when you're on hold. 1/3 of your life sleeping. Okay, so what's left then? Now all the other activities you want to do, from hobbies and interacting with your parents and your children and your spouse and all that, that's left, and the time left. And you have also some prayer to do here. How much time do you think you will spend in your entire life on the 5 obligatory prayers? Someone take a guess. What do you think? 5 months? 3 years? I wish it were 3 years. I say about 1 year. 1 year. How shameful is it that we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with 2.5 years in the bathroom and just 1 year of prayer? How shameful is that? But this is what your life is. Your life is time. So I'm convinced, and if you know otherwise, if you know anything else, please talk to me during the break, that the only way to get your life back is through dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jal. That's the only way. That whatever you're doing during your life, when you're driving, you're doing whatever, you make dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jal while you're doing it. That way, it's not being wasted. And it's so easy. Walk and make dhikr of Allah. In your car, make dhikr of Allah. On the bus, make dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jal. There's a brother in our area, in the Washington DC area, where traffic is in the worst top 10 in the country. And it's estimated that you spend 21 days of the year, out of every year, sitting still in your car in the middle of the highway. 21 days, like in the middle of the highway, absolutely stuck in traffic. So one of the brothers, he learned this fact, and he saw how much time you spend in your car. He memorized the entire Quran inside his car. The entire Quran. He'd photocopy 1 page of the Mus'haf, he'd clip it onto his dashboard, and he reads 1 verse. Stopped at the light, reads 1 verse, keeps repeating it. Next light, traffic accident, reads the next one. Memorize the entire book of Allah inside his car. That's taking your life back. That's taking advantage of these kinds of moments and times. When I said you spend 20 weeks of your life on hold, the Prophet ﷺ said that if you say Subhanallah wa bihamdihi 100 times, what happens? There'll be nobody on the Day of Judgment who has done anything better than you, except for the person who said it more than you did. You with me? Except for the person who said it more times than you did. Now, what if then I make a deal with myself? Every time I'm on hold, which is going to amount to 20 weeks, every time I'm on hold, I'm going to keep saying Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. You know how long it takes you to say it 100 times? At regular speed, Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, 100 times at regular speed. Like the hadith said, you'll be the best on the Day of Judgment except for someone who said it more than you. How long do you think it takes? 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Up to 2 minutes and 30 seconds. At regular speed. Because now people, when they want to make dhikr of Allah, they go into super speed mode for some reason. After salah, you'll find people saying, Hamda, 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 Lakbar. Who is Spallah? Who's Hamla? Who's Lakbar? This is dhikr of Allah now. And I'm not even making this up. There was a lady, and she would say Alhamdulillah once and count it twice on both hands. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Double. Save some time. Let's get this thing over with. So I'm not talking about Alhamdulillah, something that doesn't make sense. You can say it at regular speed. It takes you 2 minutes and 15 or 2 minutes and 30 seconds to say Subhanallah bihamdihi 100 times. If I make a deal with myself, every time I'm on hold, I'm going to say Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. How many times can you say it? Because it will be 20 weeks out of your life. How many times can you say Subhanallah wa bihamdihi in 20 weeks? It comes out to 8,064,000 times. I was saying this in the class one time, and an uncle put his hand up, and he said, my father, rahimahullah, he used to say Subhanallah wa bihamdihi 10,000 times every single day. He's not going to be resurrected with another group of people. We're going to be resurrected with that same group. We have to stand on the same plane as people like that, who said it 10,000 times. and companions who worshipped him. So where are you going to be when that happens? And we have to like try to do something to catch up, right? One of the early Muslims, he was praying at night and his feet hurt. So during the break, he smacked them, like tapped them with a stick, and he said that basically the companions of the Prophet, and they've surpassed us by far, but we're going to try to make this gap smaller. So I'm going to push myself. People used to push themselves. And it's the love of Allah that makes you push forward like that. So the only way to take your life back, I'm convinced, is through dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you'll be amazed at how many times you can make mention of Allah and still have normal conversation with people while people are speaking. You make dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jal. And then when it's your turn to speak, you speak. It's not like you have to become like some drone or some robot. What were you saying? No, you can still be functional and everything. So, you know, like those electronic tasbihs, those little clickers, you can be having a regular dinner with someone. And you can say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, wa la ilaha illallah, and at a regular dinner, and speak when you're spoken to and everything. Just keep it in your pocket, keep looking at it. And you look at it just at the end of that innocent regular dinner, and you will find that you've said it 5,000 times, 7,000 times. And if it wasn't in your pocket, perhaps you wouldn't have said it a single time. But it's just up to us to do something to take our life back. Because it's time. And it's just passing by. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, in hadith, he compared the ones who make dhikr of Allah to those who don't make dhikr of Allah. The Prophet said, مَثْلُ الَّذِي يَذْكُرُ اللَّهِ وَالَّذِي لَا يَذْكُرُ اللَّهِ مِثْلُ الْحَيِّ وَالْمَيِّتِ. The comparison, the parable, or the comparison of the one who mentions Allah Azza wa Jal, and those who do not make any mention of Allah Azza wa Jal are like those who are dead, alive, and those who are dead. That's exactly how they are. This one's dead because he doesn't mention Allah. This one's alive because he mentions Allah. So the question is, which one are you? Which group would you be in? Ammar ibn Yasir, the companion, he was praying at night and he was shot with an arrow. But he kept praying. He was watching. This is after a battle. He was watching. He's guarding at night. So there were two guards. One of them fell asleep and the other, he's praying. Then they're gonna switch again. So I'll fall asleep and you'll stand and watch. So Ammar anhu was shot with the first arrow and he kept praying. And he was shot with the second arrow and then only after the second arrow he feared because that's his job, to wake people up if they're under attack. So after that he woke up the other man. He said, okay, I've been shot twice. And the man said, why didn't you tell me then? He said, like, I was in the middle of ayat that I was enjoying so much. I didn't want to break my salah. Same thing happened with Imam Bukhari rahimahullah. He was praying and his students were seated, and after a while, when he finished his salah, he told one of his students to come look under my garment, see what's going on there. And something is just stinging me. And he found a hornet that was there, and it just kept stinging. It was basically trapped, under his garment. So it just kept stinging him over and over again. So the student said, why didn't you stop? He said, I was in the middle of verses that I was enjoying so much that I didn't want to stop. Now, the scholars say something interesting. What if someone finds these stories impossible? That's impossible, I don't believe that. The scholars say, the further away you are from something, the more it seems impossible to you. And the closer you are to something, the more it seems possible. Meaning, if you tell someone, for example, who spent 3 months trying to memorize Surah Al-Bayyinah, 3 months, you tell them there are some people who memorize the entire Mus'haf, the entire Quran. It's going to seem like something impossible to him because he's stuck on a short surah. But if someone memorized 27 juz of the Quran and you tell him some people memorize the whole Quran, what's he going to say? Yeah, that's what I'm planning to do, inshallah. In a few months, no big deal. Right? But the further you are away from something, the more impossible it looks to you. One Sheikh was telling the story, they asked him about some of the strangest things he's seen, and he said, I saw a man standing in prayer, and he would put his hands in his pocket, take a date out, and eat it in prayer. I said, I just stood staring at him. He said, he took another one out, and he ate it. And I was staring at this man, absolutely bewildered. So in his prayer, he noticed that I'm staring at him. So the man looked at him. The man felt like he wanted a date. The man looked at him and said, it's the last one. I would have given it to you. That was the last one. Yeah. This other guy, the phone rings the first time, he turns it off. The phone rings the second time, turns it off. The guy calls him again the third time. The guy's like, what, man? I'm praying. And you have some respect, man. I'm praying to Allah here. You're distracting me. MashaAllah. Now, if you told these two people the story of Ammar ibn Yasir was shot twice and he's still praying, or Imam Bukhari, the hornet is stinging him and he's still praying, I don't believe that. Because people now, anything distracts them from Salah. Watches, and you've seen this in Ramadan and Taraweeh, right? You've seen the guy setting his watch, checking the watch in the masjid. Some people bring their children to the masjid just to create some kind of entertainment for them, so they're not bored. You know, you bring a little child next to you, you've got something to do during the Salah. So the man's yanking on the child, pinching the child, smacking the child. It gives him some excitement, you know? Pulls him back again, pulls him again. Instead of just being bored and stuff. SubhanAllah. So, this Sheikh was saying that he was at some kind of like summer camp or what have you, but it was cold. And he said, we're all sitting in the tent and telling stories and stuff, but one guy is outside and it's cold. And he's standing in the cold, speaking for hours. So he asked the other students, like, what's his issue, standing out in the cold like that? So he's talking to his fiancée. You see what happens? When you're in love, oh man, it could be Edmonton weather and you're just outside talking. Cold, I mean, maybe you know. This guy spoke to his fiancée 3 hours on the phone. 3 hours to his fiancée. Another guy, this might be the record, spoke from Isha until Dhuhr to his fiancée. I didn't even know, like, at that point, what do you start talking about? Like, you just finish things. What do you say after that? Maybe like more salt and pepper. There's nothing else to talk about. I have to ask you dumb things now. Ketchup or... So what happens, what's going on in these examples? People in love. When you love someone, you love to hear from them. And you love to talk to them. So translate it again. If this was love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how would that be? Musa alayhi salam, he enjoyed speaking to Allah. When Allah spoke to him, Allah asked him, what is that in your right hand? Yeah? What is that in your right hand, Ya Musa? So Musa alayhi salam, and Allah, some scholars explain that Allah asked him that question just to get him relaxed and to be able to speak. So he enjoyed speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much that he started going into too much detail. Oh, this is my stick, you know, I use it to lean on and I shoot the goats with it. Then he realized he's speaking too much, so he's quickly condensed it and said, and I've got other benefits, other uses from it as well. Just cutting it short. But he enjoyed speaking to Allah so much that he just kept going on, and then he had to stop himself, right? So, and now, like, you might even be too busy to speak to your child, or too tired, your child wants to tell you something, not now, I'm tired, or not now, I'm busy, or I've got to do this and then I'll give you time. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to hear from you. What an honor it is for us that Allah wants to hear from you. Ibn Mas'ud, whenever someone would give him a copy of the Quran, which was a rarity back then, one of the good deeds back then was that you would sit down and copy the whole Quran out with your hand and give it to someone as a gift to read. And inshallah you get a reward every time they read from it. But now of course they're printed, they're all over the place and stuff. But when Ibn Mas'ud, someone would give him the Quran, he would hold it to his chest and he would say, Kalam Rabbi, Kalam Rabbi, Kalam Rabbi, the speech of my Lord, the speech of my Lord, the speech of my Lord. And he used to also give advice to us about how to read the Quran. He said, when you read the Quran, read it slowly, contemplate its meanings, and he says, do not let the concern of one of you be the end of the surah. So someone says, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read all of Al-Baqarah. So what do? You put a bookmark at the end of Al-Baqarah. Or you put some kind of marker at the end of Al-Baqarah, or you look at what page it ends in. And what do you do then? As you're reading, you start to get tired. You start to go back and look at the, okay, how thick is it? Okay. Then after a while, you look, how much left now? He said, don't let the concern of you be the end of the surah. That's quality reading right there. Not concerned about when this ends. I'm enjoying it. When you enjoy it, it becomes easier. And then after a while, it becomes an addiction. You have to finish whatever it is that you have assigned for yourself to read for that day. And he used to say as well, Ibn Mas'ud again, that whoever would love to know how much he loves Allah, then let him basically examine himself based on the Quran, look at the Quran. If he loves to recite the Quran, then he loves Allah. Because why? Why is it that if I love to recite the Quran, I love Allah? Because he said, because the Quran is the speech of Allah. Just like that guy, he didn't get tired of the speech of his loved one over the phone. And it's late night and he's talking, he's not even sleeping. So transfer this now to the love of Allah. You love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the same way, you pray and you're enjoying it. But some people, they're praying and they just can't wait to go to bed. And every Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, they look at the pillow. Wonderful. Assalamu alaikum. So when there's someone you love their speech. You love to hear it. That's how Ibn Mas'ud was. Uthman radiallahu anhu, Uthman ibn Affan, he recited the entire Quran in one night. How? I don't believe that. Possible. Just do the math. What are you talking about? Yeah, do the math. As one of the Mashaykh said, he said someone who has good memorization of the Quran, he can recite a whole juz'u in 18 minutes. Multiply that by 30. Can you finish the whole Quran in one night? Canadians. Yes or no? Somebody nods. One person. Thank you. You know, this happened in our times. And the Sheikh, the guy that had this happen to him, told it to a Sheikh. The Sheikh told it to me directly. He said, I went to one of the major scholars, and I said, Sheikh, how is it possible Uthman radiallahu anhu finished the entire Quran in one night? The Sheikh said, when you pray Isha tonight, come to my house immediately after Isha. This is no joke now. So the man said, I prayed Isha. Remember, this man told the Sheikh told me directly. He said, I prayed Isha and I went to the Sheikh's house, knocked on the door. The Sheikh said, come, you have wudu? Okay, stand here. Allahu Akbar. He said he kept praying and at night, reciting, and he went through the whole Quran. When it came close to Fajr, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, there's your answer. So he actually, you understand how he answered them, right? So he had them live it. But what an honor for him now, right? He can walk around saying, yeah, I finished the whole Quran in one night. Other people boast about other, I finished Halo in one night, or I don't know. Actually, I have something to admit. I always talk about how I hate video games and stuff. And just a few weeks ago, I was at a city, and I told the brother to bring his Xbox. So let me see what this is about. He brought some kind of game. I don't know what it was called, but if you have a machine gun, you're just killing people, right? You don't know what they did, you just kill people. And he explained it to me and everything, and I played for about 10 minutes, and then I got super dizzy and I was about to vomit. It was a first-person shooter. I'm just wondering how people, I mean, I know this is nothing to do with the topic, but how do people keep up with that? It makes you dizzy, it makes you sick. No? Anyone else in here? You? What a blessing that is. If you didn't get sick from that, you'd play for hours. Your mom would smack you, nothing would work. Just glued onto this thing. Yeah, so I thought that was a blessing that you get sick from the video game. Well, then I don't have to get addicted to it or anything. Anyway, but it wasn't all that, just like, you know, shooting and stuff. Anyways, all right, I want to talk about one of the last things I want to talk about is loving to meet Allah. And the Prophet said, "Man ahabba liqa Allah," you know it. Ahabba Allahu liqa'ah. Whoever loves and longs to meet Allah, Allah would love to meet him as well. What an honor! What an honor that you love to meet Allah. Obviously, after you die, right? And so Allah is looking forward to meeting you. But the question is, how can I get to the point where I would love to meet Allah Azza wa Jalla? One of the scholars was asked, why is it that people hate death? Not fear death. It's natural to fear death. They just hate the idea of dying. And the scholar answered him in a magnificent way. He said, if you spend your whole life, investing and building in one place, and then suddenly you're transplanted to another place where you've got nothing there. Would you like that? So now you just bought your first house here in Edmonton, and you've got your fiancé, and you're planning to both get married and move into this house. And you just landed your dream job. You just started a few months ago in this company. And so you're just planning your whole life. You've been going to school and everything. Finally you graduated, you got your dream job, you've got your fiancé now, you've got your wedding date set, you've got the house that you bought, and you've got payments on a brand new car now, and you've established, you put years into establishing your life here, and then they just knock on your door and tell you, we're going to take you overnight to Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's a real place. We're going to put you in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Who would look forward to that? Who would be like, yeah, that's awesome, that's great, I'm looking forward to that. I just have my car here, my fiancé, my family, my parents live here, my whole life is here, my childhood friends, everything. Nobody would want to move, correct? So that's the idea that people don't want to leave this dunya because they've been planning and putting so much effort and energy, investing so much in this life and little into the next one. Why would they want to go to the next one? Make sense? One person nod. Makes sense. But what if you were planning and all your plans were in another city? Let's say a superior city like Calgary, for example. I'm just kidding. But you know, like when I lived in Calgary, most people work at Fort McMurray, right? Even here, maybe some people go to work at Fort Mac. So I haven't even been there, and I don't plan to. But all I know is that it's just cold and there's nothing there. It's just boiled, right? But a guy might be working there, and he sends all the money to wherever his home is, Edmonton, and he's buying a house and making payments towards that house. So whatever money he gets here, he sends over to keep building for himself and his future family in Edmonton. And then they come and tell him, after he built like a magnificent, let's say, mansion. He worked so hard at Fort Mac, he built a mansion in Edmonton now. He's got a nice car. He's driving some 4x4 because of the weather there, but he's got a nice car waiting in his garage in his fantastic mansion in Edmonton. And he's got his newly, he just got married and his wife is waiting for him in this mansion. Then they come and tell him, hey, you have to leave Fort Mac. How do you think he'll feel? Like, sure, I didn't want this dump anyways. I have a nice car. Okay, you can burn this one. I don't even like the apartment I was in. I'm looking forward to it. So the same thing now, let's transfer it to dunya and akhirah. That if I'm constantly doing things every day, working towards the akhirah, I will look forward to it, the next life. So if every day I pray 12 rak'at, 12 rak'at, extra rak'at after the 5 obligatory prayers. So what happens if you pray the 12 extra voluntary rak'at? What happens? What's the reward? A palace is built for you in a Jannah. So I finished the 12 today, I've got a palace. And tomorrow, I finished it successfully, I've got a palace. I missed it the next day, I just missed out on a palace, but the day after that, I've got another palace. And maybe even I'm keeping some kind of rough number track in my mind. Inshallah, I've got like 70 palaces right now in Jannah. And not only that, I'm also planting trees there. Because the Prophet ﷺ, when he ascended to the heavens, he met Ibrahim a.s. And Ibrahim a.s. was the only prophet who sent salam to us. أقرئ أمتك السلام. Give your ummah as-salam. And tell them that Al-Jannah, its land, is good and fertile. Very fertile land. And that to plant in Al-Jannah, all you have to do is say Subhanallah, Walhamdulillah, Wallahu Akbar, wa la ilaha illallah. Not in any order. The same 4 that you would say at that dinner and say it 5,000 times, that's the same one. Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah. In any order. Or in another narration that says Subhanallah bihamdihi, Subhanallah al-Azim. Remember this one? The one you're going to say on the way to the bus stop from one class to another? He said every time you say one of these, a tree is planted for you in a Jannah. So when I finish that dinner and I look, wow, I said it 5,000 times. Inshallah, got this huge now meadow or field or this thick, dense forest loaded. Tomorrow I went 5,000 times. After that, 10,000, 15,000. And I'm just planning and I'm building palaces and trees and everything. And I'm taking care of the orphans so I can enter a Jannah like this with the Prophet ﷺ. Then the angel of death knocks on your door. They're like, hey, what do you want? You want to stay here at Fort McMurray or, you know, the trees and all that stuff? Yeah, let's go, let's get out of here. True or false? True. So that's why then they were the righteous before us. They would be hoping to meet Allah Azza wa Jal, and they would be looking forward to it. How can we get to that level? Where you look forward to it. Allah, there are stories of righteous people on their deathbed. So from the Tabi'een, the generation after the companions. They were on their deathbed, and one of them began to cry. So people thought he's crying because he's going to miss his family and his children. We're talking about high-level love here, right? And he said, I'm not crying because of that. He said, I'm crying because I'm going to miss Qiyam al-Layl. What? How can you get to that level? Qiyam, which people find to be the most burdensome thing on earth right now. And only when there's a calamity, like severe calamity, we get up for Qiyam. Okay, let's try to fix this problem. Right? But otherwise, no man. I need my sleep, and I got my beauty sleep, and I got my... And some people, it's a hopeless situation, no beauty sleep. The point is, this man is crying on his deathbed, not because of anything else. I'm just going to miss Qiyam. He loves it so much. SubhanAllah. Many people, death would come to them, and they will be pleased that they're going to meet the beloved. Bilal radiallahu anhu is on his deathbed. And he says, غَدًا نَلْقَى الْأَحِبَّ مُحَمَّدًا وَحِزْبًا. Tomorrow we meet the beloved. Tomorrow, yani soon, we meet the beloved, Muhammad and his companions. That's amazing, Allah. But how can you get that without the love of Allah Azza wa Jalla? Can you imagine someone who doesn't love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much, and yet he's looking forward to meeting Allah? It's impossible. Impossible that he's looking forward to meeting Allah and he would love to meet Allah, but he doesn't really love him that much. But these are from the fruits and the benefits of loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I wanted to close by saying one last thing. And again, one more time, I want to express my love for the theme for Islam Awareness Week this week. Me keeping the theme about love at a time like this. What an excellent theme and what a good choice that is. One more time, I commend you. But I want to close by saying, make sure you don't represent Allah, who is loving, and His religion that is so fair. Make sure you don't represent it with hatred all the time. And that's what we're doing. We're doing a very bad job. We represent Islam with hatred all the time. When we have dialogue with non-Muslim, it's debate. When we get them agitated, we get them angry. When we go into Muslim forums and Muslim websites, our comments are nasty. We start to debate with each other. And all we show is hatred. That is not the way of the believers at all. Ever. It's never ever proper for the believer to be hating constantly like this. And then you have people who will tell you, but what about wala and bara? Hating for the sake of Allah, loving for the sake of Allah. Okay, read any book on wala and bara. Most people just know how to say these two words, wala and bara. Hatred and love for the sake of Allah. Or love and hate for the sake of Allah. That's all they know, but they've never read a book on it. Read any book on it, and it allows room for natural love. Someone might have parents who commit shirk. You have to hate them. You can hate the shirk that they commit, but you can love them. And you have no choice but to love them. Islam never commands you to remove natural mercy out of your heart. This is a religion that gives reward for mercy. And one of the beautiful hadith that I've quoted to you before, but it was a companion who was a very sweet and very sensitive man. He came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, Ya Rasulullah, inni la'adbahu ash-shat wa ana arhamuha. Ya Rasulullah, I slaughtered the sheep. Well, I feel really bad for it. So he's slaughtering the sheep. He knows he needs this meat for his family and his children. And there's next to him a man slaughtering it. He doesn't feel sorry for it. It's just business. But this one, he knows he has to do it, but he feels so bad for this animal. So what happens here? The Prophet gives him an answer that's brief, but it's so beautiful. He tells him, وَلَكَ فِي ذَلِكَ أَجْرًا. And you get reward in that. So he's standing here feeling sorry for the sheep. He gets more reward than the person next to him who doesn't feel sorry for it. There's nothing wrong with that guy. But this man got something extra, and he gets extra reward from Allah because he feels bad for this animal. So this is a religion that rewards kindness and rewards love and rewards mercy. What a shame it is when we represent it with hatred only. And I'm not only talking about the extreme hatred you see in the news, people doing things thinking it's Islamic. I'm talking about just the regular hatred that we do on the forums, and we watch a video and someone just gets nasty in the comments. What for? I saw a video one time of a child reciting the Quran beautifully, and he makes a mistake in recitation. Then the comments, some people were saying, MashaAllah, may Allah preserve this young man, all that. And then one guy is like, he made a mistake in the recitation. And this is not acceptable to make a mistake in the book of Allah. And you need to remove this video immediately, brother. And I thought to myself, MashaAllah, this guy must be really religious. I mean, his standard's high. So I clicked on his... you know it's going crazy already, right? I clicked on his profile to see, and in the old days, I don't know if YouTube still does this, but they used to put the last comments that you made, they used to put it on the left column. So the last 3 videos you commented on, they would show your comments like that. And I saw the last comment he made, and the caption was a girl wearing very skimpy clothing dancing in front of her webcam. And his comment to her was, muchos buenos, I don't know. MashaAllah, huh? Here it was muchos buenos. But when it comes to the little child who's in the Quran, very nice voice and everything, it's not acceptable, and just hate. So, in the end, one more time, make sure you don't represent the religion of Allah, who is al-Wadud, the all-loving, with hatred. Jazakumullah khair for coming and for your attentive listening. Sallallahu barak ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Kamal, Instructor Kamal, or Chef Kamal. We're gonna take a break at 6:45, I guess. Mom's over there. Tomorrow and for the next few days, we're going to continue Islam Awareness Week. Tomorrow our topic will be love for the sake of love for family and friends. It'll be in room 9202. If you don't know how to get there, just let me know. Okay, I see a lot of familiar faces. Okay. Getting weird. What an honor it is to have Sheikh Kamal to come to Edmonton today. I hope the Edmonton weather didn't scare you away. It's not that bad. If you do have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring a mic over. Where is the question? Right. Yes,
I have a question about backbiting and slandering, because I read about backbiting and slandering in this surah that talked about eating the flesh of your brother.
Right.
Yeah. So I've been worried, like, okay, does backbiting mean seeing somebody, probably seeing somebody on the bus that I know and my mom knows? Then when I get home, then I tell my mom that I saw this person on the bus. Does it mean
that's all?
Bited the person? No.
That's all you would say?
Yeah. There are other scenarios, like also probably someone see someone doing something bad, and you go to someone that knows the person, and you tell the person that you see this person doing something bad.
Gotcha.
Does that also mean backbiting?
Very good.
And also, like, there are other scenarios like that are also similar to something like backbiting. So I want you to
doing what? What's the last one you said?
Like, there might be also other scenarios.
Okay.
That might fall also under that category. So I want you to explain.
Exactly. Inshallah, we'll give guidelines that might cover whatever scenario that shows up. Alright, so basically, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulihil ameen, amma ba'd. The first one, where you met someone you know on the bus, and you go home and all you say to your mom is, I met so-and-so on the bus today, that is not backbiting. That means you're just a sweet man, that's all it is. Because nothing happened here. So backbiting is when you say something about someone that you know they will not accept, that they don't like. Even if it's true, because that's what the companion said to the Prophet. He said, Ya Rasulullah, what if what we're saying is true about them? He said, then it's still backbiting. So if I go and tell a brother about someone, like this guy, he's deceitful and a liar, a very wicked person, it's backbiting, clearly. Even if he really is a wicked person, it's backbiting. Because he wouldn't like this information being told about him. Even if it is true, he wouldn't like that. And something very important, the fact that you can tell someone what you said behind their back doesn't make it not backbiting, you understand? Because many times people will backbite and they'll say, I can say this to their face, by the way. Meaning, if I can say it to their face, it's not backbiting, because I can easily go and repeat this to their face. Well, then why don't you just say it to their face? Because now they're not here, you're backbiting. So it's still backbiting. Anything bad about the person, true or false, still backbiting. Then there's some exceptions, such as, and I doubt this will be any of our jobs, but it could be, but people take it as a green light to talk about people. But let's say someone is like a major con man or a crook or a thief or a deviant, and you need to warn of this person, that's not backbiting. Because the greater good of warning of this person overshadows that of saying something about him. So if someone is like a very, very deviant person, and you warn people, don't go to his class, don't go to him, he's extremely deviant. And as I'm saying that, people now just use, oh, he's a deviant. They don't even know anything about him. But I mean, like someone who's clearly a deviant, you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, then in this case, it's not backbiting. Or someone comes and asks you for advice. So let's say a sister comes to you and asks you about someone that she's interested in getting married to. Here you have to be honest. And if there are bad things about the person, it's permissible for you to say them. So let's say that the man doesn't pray and he, commits major sins and with no remorse whatsoever. And this is a nice religious sister. Should she marry him? No. How do you tell her that? Oh, just don't do it. Okay, tell me about what happened. Yeah. No, it's not backbiting at this point. You have to be honest here. Unless you want her to marry him, so you have to tell her, listen, he doesn't pray at all. And he commits major sins. Now, it's not backbiting so long as until you convince them. The minute she's convinced, any other extra information will be considered backbiting. Meaning, she now is convinced that he's a bad person, doesn't pray, commits major sins, and then she's like, okay, that's enough then. In that case, I'm not interested in him whatsoever. Like, no, wait, there's more. He also beats his mother, and now it's backbiting. Or someone wants to do business with someone else. I want to do business with Brother Hassan. Is he trustworthy? Is he reliable? Here you have to be honest with him and speak freely and honestly about Brother Hassan. And the minute you've described him well enough, don't add any more information. That's a permissible scenario where it's not considered backbiting. But if you go over, then it will be backbiting. Allah Ta'ala. Does that help? So, nothing bad about the person, even if it's true. As long as they're not there, don't say anything bad about them to someone else. And the only time it's allowed is if you're warning, let's say, the community of a major con man or a major deviant, which I doubt will be any of our jobs, or someone is asking you for advice about someone because they want to get into business with him, or if someone wants to marry someone. We had a case in our area. A brother was about to marry the sister, and she used to commit major sins. While wearing hijab and everything, she used to commit major sins with this brother. So this brother came and asked the mashayikh, he said, should I tell him? What do you think, yes or no? Yes. She used to commit major sins and she made tawbah from it. Should I tell him? No. Yes? No, she made tawbah. Never ever open your mouth. She made tawbah. If she was still doing it, then yeah, you have to tell her. But she's not doing it anymore. Don't you dare. People's reputation is something very heavy and important in Islam. Does that help? Yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. Here at the MSO, we do a lot of dawah on campus. We set up booths and we sort of talk to people as they pass by. So a lot of times you have people who approach us just to agitate us, just to aggregate us in arguments. How do you suggest we pursue these arguments while still, remaining
very good.
Keeping our cool?
Very good. You would use what is known as the latte method. It's just a technique that Starbucks uses with their employees, right? And well, I don't like Starbucks, but I'm just referencing how well they train people, right? Do you guys know the Container Store? You know the Container Store in Canada? Okay. There's a chain of stores we have in America, and all they sell are just containers. Baskets, boxes, this one box this big, literally there's a box this big, then there's a rectangular box this big, and a square box. I see you. Yeah? And just all these boxes, just put your hand out. Distracting. You know how many hours of training employees at the Container Store get per year? 187 hours of training. And wallahi, they only sell containers and baskets. That's it. And they make it sound like so incredible. They train them how to help the customer visualize the space you have in your house. And what do you need exactly to put in it? It's containers, man. I'll be just like, hey man, just look around. There's some shelves here, you'll find something. Get out of here. That's a lot of training. So what's the latte method? It's basically they have every employee in Starbucks write out what they would say to an agitated customer or to a customer who starts yelling. What would you say to them? Write it out, memorize it, and it's training. They come, no matter what they're saying, you say it back to them. It's training. Controlling yourself is training, it's not anything else. If you look at army training or police academy especially, what do they do to the cadets all day? Just scream at their face. Scream at their face. And they're just saying nonsense to them. Just yelling at their face like this. Why? So that when they get on the road now, they're trained in controlling their temper. That's why I hope when you yell at the police officer, he just remains calm. Because he got trained. So the dua need training. That's all it is. I'm not going to tell you a special dua. The rude guy comes and just... It doesn't work like that. So just train yourself. Have your answer ready and that's it. I was just telling this story yesterday. I was giving, a few weeks ago, I was in Ireland and I gave street dawah there for the first time in my life. And it was incredibly difficult. Like, oh man, it was rough. But this one old man came to me. And he was like rude and rough and just every negative like adjective you could think of. And he basically was saying, ISIS is Islam basically. And you guys should stop what you're doing. I said, look, that's not Islam. And if it were Islam, I told him an example in America, they're estimated about 7 to 10 million Muslims in America. If their religion was violence, don't you think we'd be hearing a lot more in the news of murder, another gunshot, another this? There would be a lot more murder if 10 million Muslims are practicing a religion. He said, no, that is your religion. I said, look, I've never murdered anybody. I haven't. I don't know why you're laughing. I've never come close to murdering anyone. And so if Islam commands me to hurt people, why am I not doing that? He said, because you're not a good Muslim, that's why. I said, the nerve of this guy. Anyways, but he was like he was agitating all the dua. Actually, I had stepped in to take over from another da'iyah that was just it was escalating. But just have a ready answer, and that's the end of that. It's really, inshallah, that simple. You just go into training mode. You're not having, what am I going to say? You know what you're going to say, and you're just going to say it. We used to say something to calm down agitated people, or people would come, because when I first moved to Calgary, the Islamic Awareness Week, the theme was Jesus was a Muslim. And posters and t-shirts, and it was very in your face to the Christians, and many were very offended by it, you know. Like, oh, the one that you think is your God, hey, he was one of us. It was very in your face. And it was too late to change it, because I came in the middle, or at the beginning of IAW, and they'd already printed everything, even like water bottles, they had the Jesus was a Muslim thing, everything. So we can't change it now. So we just wrote out a phrase to say to people who are getting upset. So if someone comes to the booth angry, how dare you say this? Listen, I'm not trying to offend you or anything, it's just what I believe about him. Like, there are 1 point some billion of us, and we believe that he was a Muslim, meaning someone who submitted to his Creator. And I can understand you being angry because that disagrees with your belief, but at the same time, it's just what we believe. We're not trying to force it down anyone's throat, but it's just what we believe, and we're sharing it with you. Why are you upset? You know? And that calms people down. Anyways, not to go too long. Allah Ta'ala.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, wa alaikum salam.
I have a question in regards to student loans.
Surah?
Student loans.
Student loans. I was hoping it was surah something. Like surah
I know
loans.
it's a hard topic, but
Yeah, I apologize because I'm not from Canada, I'm from the US, and I don't know how it works and all that, so I would say talk to a local sheikh. I apologize. And maybe some of you already know the answer, just go tell the sister during the break. I mean, you asked someone and you know the answer, you're not going to make up the answer. Yeah, apologize. There was someone here waiting for a while.
How do you prove to someone that Allah is like loving? Because some people in Edmonton say that Allah is not loving and such bad.
Okay, I mean, they're probably basing that idea off of what they see around them, right? So like, I mean, they don't know Allah Azza wa Jal, and they haven't read the Quran, but they're just coming, let's say, to your booth and arguing with you, no, I don't think Allah is loving. So what do you think they're basing it on? Probably the news and what they see happening around the world, correct? I mean, where else would they get it? They haven't read the Quran, but they get an idea that Allah is not loving and Islam is not a peaceful religion. Why? Because it's simple. Turn on Fox News channel and you'll see that it's not a peaceful religion. But what we do, and we always do this, we don't have to explain the mistakes of people. We distance ourselves, we distance the teachings of Islam from the actions of Muslims. And I never put myself in a position where I have to explain why a Muslim did some mistake. I don't ever have to do that. So we say, look, if you want to understand the teachings of Islam, you look at what Muslim scripture, Islamic scripture says, and then you'll get it. As for what's happening in the Middle East or in this country or in that country, is it purely because of religion or is there some politics involved? And no doubt you will find always something political involved. And for not just Islam, no religion on earth ever said go kill the other guy simply because he's the other guy. There's not a single religion on earth that says that. So anytime there is a conflict and Islam is involved, you'll find, is it purely because of chapter this, verse that, or is there some other issue? Land dispute, or oil, or some other kind of problem, or factions, or something like that. So there's typically something else. So we tell them, look, the way we know about Allah, if He's loving or not, is we read His book. And we see how He described Himself. And we don't describe Allah by looking at the actions of rogue individuals that suddenly represent the Ummah. You understand what I'm saying? You got it? Okay. Allah Ta'ala.
Assalamu alaikum, Kamal.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Where are you?
I'm here.
Yeah.
I think I just have a question. The thing is, like, I've been like listening to internet, like Zakir Naik and Ahmed Didat and like Bilal Phillips and all these people, and like I've been hearing that like doing a da'wah is kind of fun because things if I'm not mistaken, like in chapter 103, verse 3 Surah Al-Asr says like
I can tell you've been listening to Dr. Zakir Naik, okay? Yeah. You're quoting chapters and stuff, like, okay.
What was on hacking onto the sub? It's like basically saying like you have to do like da'wahs and stuff like that. And the thing is like I've I've been like doing da'wah to like the Christian like internet who are like attacking Islam and I'm trying to peacefully tell them Islam. Okay. And so like I'm just wondering if it's like a requirement in Islam or is it like just like a good deed?
Okay, very good. There are two opinions. One group of scholars said it's only obligatory upon a few. It's like the adhan. So when let's say in any given Muslim village, it's time for Asr. So one person makes the adhan for Asr. Does everyone in the village have to get up and also make the adhan for Asr? No, that's known as fard kifaya. One person does it on behalf of everyone else. So some scholars argue that da'wah is fard kifaya. If there's a group that's doing it and doing a good job, then that absolves everyone else of the responsibility. Then there's the other group that said no, da'wah is an individual obligation upon everyone, educated, uneducated, man, woman, young, old, they all have to give da'wah. And that is actually, and inshallah, the stronger opinion because there's tons and tons and tons of evidence to support that. But here's the good news, so no one's scared. So what kind of da'wah are you obligated to give if you're 14, don't know too much about Islam? Da'wah isn't just speaking to people, to random people in the street. Da'wah is also, according to the Quran, enjoining what is good, forbidding what is evil. Right? So enjoining what is evil and forbidding what is good, that's, the other way around. That's da'wah. So everyone in the Ummah is able to do a basic level of that. And that is, there are a lot of evidences, I'm skipping that. But that is the opinion, that everyone has to give da'wah in one form or another. And it doesn't have to be just talking to a stranger or da'wah to Christians. It could be someone giving da'wah to Muslims. It could be someone who doesn't know anything about Islam, but he walks by two young men using bad words. Hey, don't use bad words. That's da'wah. See someone smoking. Hey, don't smoke. You shouldn't do that. The guy like, what's your proof? I don't know the proof, but I know you shouldn't smoke. Good enough. So on a basic level, yes, everybody has to give da'wah. Allah Ta'ala. What is the best way to answer the question, why is it your Prophet married a young girl? Okay, so 9 basically. So why did your Prophet marry a young girl? What's the best way to answer that question? And there are many different ways to answer it. And feel free to reject the answer I'm giving, but this is the one that I like to give, and it's my favorite, and obviously my opinion is the best one. But I mean, in my opinion, it is the best answer. That's why I use it. That's what I'm trying to say. But you can do the whole, that Aisha was physically larger for her age as well, and when women in these hot climates, they reach the menses earlier. And you can also argue that when the Prophet passed away, Aisha was 18 years old, and she lived on for 56 years after the death of the Prophet. And she had tons and tons of opportunities to object to this marriage. And she never once did. Why? Because it was normal for the Arabs. Likewise, the enemies of the Prophet wanted to find anything wrong with him so they can highlight it. They never once said, oh look, he married a young girl. Why? Because in that society there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. So, fast forward to our times now. Why do people find there's an issue with that? It simply comes down to one thing, and that is ethnocentrism, where it's the inherent belief that your culture is superior and better to other cultures. And so you use it as a measuring stick against every other culture, even the ones that existed 1,400 years ago in a completely different part of the world. And so when someone asked me, why did your Prophet marry a young girl? I asked him, how old would you like her to be? Or how old would you have liked her to be? And then I wait for a number. And whatever number they give you, it's not based on any science. If you want to really argue science, when any young girl reaches menses, she's biologically able to have children. But up here, is she mentally ready or not? Now, today, no Muslim advocates marrying a 12-year-old. And don't put your hand up if you're 13, but who in here would want to marry a 12-year-old? Nobody. You're in your mid-20s, you marry a 12-year-old, and she's like, I gotta do my math homework. And there's a little Barbie doll that came out, like, are you going to cook? I said, no, but I've got like an ice cream machine. Okay, so no Muslim today ever advocates any young girl getting married. Why? Because the world has changed now. Now, young girls or kids now, they go through years and years of schooling, and they need that in order to be able to cope and to deal with this world and understand the complex world that we've created now. So a 12-year-old is still a child. A 16-year-old is still a child. An 18-year-old, I'm sorry, but in America, an 18-year-old is still a child. And I've met 40-year-olds who are children still. So no one in our times now advocates marrying a young girl. But suppose there is, today, in some tribe in the jungle, do I have to stop by the way? Okay. Some tribe in the jungle somewhere, very primitive tribe if I can use this term, deep in the jungle. And in that society, there is no schooling system or anything. And the most knowledgeable person and the youngest person have the same skills. Basically, if a young man reaches the age of 15 and he knows how to build a hut and hunt and build his own hunting equipment, he is just as knowledgeable and mature as someone who's 60 years old. There's nothing to learn in that society. Very primitive, okay? The girl, by the time she's age 12 and she knows how to cook and clean what her husband or the man brings, she knows how to clean her hut and everything, she has basically reached the top of the knowledge that you can attain in that society. So now, this tribal group is going to have a marriage between a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, okay? Now, in that society, would it be okay for them to get married, the 15-year-old and the 12-year-old? Absolutely. If you're going to object to this marriage, what are you going to object based upon? And I always say, so now a white guy comes and interrupts the wedding ceremony. No, we're not going to have any of this. Okay? And they're like, that was my white guy accent, by the way, no offense to anybody. And looking at the white guys. They're all checking. Are they offended? Oh, they're not offended. They're our guests. So they're like, okay, what's your problem? He's like, well, in America, we decided on the number 18. That's when she should get married. You know what they're gonna do, right? They're gonna cook him for that wedding ceremony and eat him. Because the number 18, actually in America, I don't know about Canada, in America it's not even 18. 18 is when a girl can marry herself off. But in most states in America, you can get married at age 16, the parents have to sign off. In some states until now, 15, 14. So there's no science to say 18 is the best age to get married or anything. It's just that our current culture, because if you look at some of the queens in England, they were like 13, Romeo and Juliet, how old were they? By our standards today, they're little kids, like 13 and 12 and stuff. And this whole story about the romance, what romance? Slap this one, slap that one, go back to 6th grade and finish your homework. And even in Virginia, we had a statesman in like 1901, 1909 who married a 9-year-old. Until recently it was acceptable in America, but our current society said we don't like that, and we came up with a number, not based on any science or any study. But because we're ethnocentric, we believe that our cultures and our culture and our values are so correct and so superior that I believe I have the right to go back 1,400 years back in time and question an entirely different culture from an entirely different region and say, how come you don't have our standards of today? And that's arrogant, really arrogant. So, so when someone asks me, so today we don't advocate any young girl getting married, but back then in that culture, it was acceptable for them, and there was no schooling system, and people matured quickly. What's the problem? And someone might just take this quote of me saying, what's the problem with it? Speaker Kamal El-Mekki says, what's the problem? No, I said, what's the problem in that society, in that time? And this time, I'm saying we have a problem. We have a big problem if someone tried to do it now. Wallahu ta'ala. But feel free to answer whichever way you want.
My question is that when you're asking for forgiveness, do you only ask forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or do you ask forgiveness from the person you've sinned against?
MashaAllah, excellent question. Yes, both, right? You ask forgiveness from Allah and you ask forgiveness from the person you offended. Because, see, there are two parts, right? Very important parts. There's two parts in Islam. One part is your relationship with your Creator. And the second part is your relationship with people. Many times you'll meet someone who tells you, oh, I'm just going to be nice to people and good with everyone and not hurt anyone or offend anyone, and God should take me to heaven. But they're missing the other part. You have a good relationship with Allah and a good relationship with people. Not one or the other. And some people are good with Allah and nasty with people. And some people are very good with people and horrible with Allah. Not like that. Both are together. So if you offend someone, if you're wise, you better get them to forgive you now. And do whatever it takes. Wipe your ego away, everything, your pride, swallow it. Just get them to forgive you now. Because if they don't forgive you now, Allah will forgive sins between you and Him. But He's not going to forgive a sin between you and someone else. That's for that person to forgive you. So what if you die and that person hasn't forgiven you? Then they come on the Day of Judgment. And when you're brought up, because every single person, one by one, will be brought up in front of the gates of paradise, and they will be asked, and they will announce, this is so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, whoever has any claim, come and take it right now. So then that person that you offended, and you did not ask for forgiveness in this life, he'll step up and say, yeah, she one time said this and that about me, and did this to me, and ruined my this and that, and I want, how are they going to get it from you now? They're going to take your good deeds, right? And that's why the Prophet ﷺ talked about the muflis, the bankrupt individual, who loses all his good deeds, and then he starts to take from their bad deeds, and then he's thrown back into the hellfire. He passed so many stages, made it past that point, and then he goes back into the hellfire. So the point is, always seek forgiveness from people now before they get it from you in hard currency. That's why Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, if people ever were backbiting him, he would send them a bowl of dates or a gift, yeah? And he would say, actually that was Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, right? He would say, with a note, the note would say, it has come to my attention that you have assigned to me, meaning given to me, some of your good deeds. When you insult someone, They get your good deeds on the Day of Judgment. So I heard that you give me some of your good deeds. I couldn't find anything with which to thank you besides this bowl of dates. Please accept it from me. So next time my sister insults you or something, send her some chocolate, some candy. So thank you so much. I heard you gave me some good deeds. Please accept this gift. It's the only way I can thank you. So yes, make sure. And just to close quickly, there's a very beautiful hadith that shows how there are many different scenarios, but one scenario is that someone who's good with Allah, but he's got one person who's very offended with him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just so you see how loving Allah is, Allah intercedes. And He starts to tell this person, forgive him. And the person's like, no. And Allah says, forgive him, I'll give you a Jannah. No, forgive him and I'll give you this and this, until the person forgives. So yes, the answer is yes. Allah ta'ala. How much do you need to know in order to call non-Muslims to Islam? Basically, it's very simple. Let's first agree that the more knowledge you have, the more effective perhaps and the better you'll be at giving da'wah and answering questions. Can we agree on that? Simple, right? But with that being said, if you call yourself a Muslim, you have enough basic knowledge with which to refer to yourself as a Muslim. That basic knowledge is enough to call people to Allah with. And if you're asked a question you don't know the answer to, just say, I don't know the answer to that, I'll get you the answer inshallah. That's it. Now, what's the proof for this? The proof is Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. He becomes Muslim, and forget his knowledge, there's nothing to know about Islam at that point. When Abu Bakr became Muslim, he was the first man to become Muslim. So at that point, what was the information that was available about Islam? Was there prayer? Charity? Fasting, Umrah, anything? Nothing. What was the information available? Hey, there's only one God. Don't worship these others. There's only one God. And that man right there, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, that's his messenger. True or false? Was there any other information? That was it. Abu Bakr took this information, these 2 points, and he brought 5 out of the 10 given glad tidings of paradise to Islam. 5. Look at the quality and quantity. So that means, if you have enough knowledge to call yourself a Muslim with, that's enough to call people to Allah with. Because non-Muslims, they don't ask you difficult questions, give me the form of that fiqh ruling on this issue. They just ask you why did Allah create us, and why are we here, and these simple things. Then they ask you about some politics, and that's it. So you all have the bare minimum, inshallah. Wallahu ta'ala.
Assalamu alaikum. What are signs that Allah loves a person?
What are signs that Allah loves a person? Good, very good. And there are many signs. Just to throw some of them out there. For example, because I'm thinking also, there are 2 important questions, like what are signs that you love Allah and what are signs that Allah loves you? From the signs that you love Allah is that you, for example, follow the Prophet ﷺ, and it's very clear in the Quran. قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. If you truly love Allah, follow me and Allah will love you. Now, to know if Allah loves you or not, if Allah facilitates the khair and the good for you, then it's a sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you. If Allah loves you, He will call Jibreel and announce to him that He loves you. Then Jibreel will announce to all the angels in the heavens that they love you, that Allah loves you, and so they will love you as well. And then when Allah loves you, people around you love you as well. Qubul, you get qubul from people around you, they start to love you, and they like you. This is a sign again. If you remain in obedience of Allah Azza wa Jal, staying away from the ma'asi, Allah is protecting you from that, and it's a sign that He loves you. Likewise, if Allah tests you, it's a sign that He loves you. And I know you're thinking, well, if He loves me, why make my car burn and my child falls down the stairs? What kind of love is that? See, if you think of this world only, in this life only, it will not look like love. And if you think of the next life, it'll look like love. And that's how the Muslim is. We think of the next life. We don't focus here, focus there. Alright? So if you focus on the next life, every calamity removes from your sins, raises you in rank in paradise, takes away from your mountain of bad deeds, adds to your mountain of good deeds. Every dua that you make to Allah that's not answered, you get it on the Day of Judgment. That's one option. So what will the people feel on the Day of Judgment? Like, So now you've got all your prayers here piled up, your prayers, your charity, everything, good speech, everything right there. And that's it, that's all the things that you worked for. Suddenly, other mountains of reward are just slammed on top of that. You're like, okay, ya Allah, I already got my rewards for the salah that I did and the things that I've done. Where does this other pile from? And Allah will tell them, or they will be told, these are all the prayers that you made, the dua, the supplications that you made in this life, in the dunya, that were not answered. You get them in the next life in the form of rewards. So now you want to know how dramatic it is? What will the people wish at that point? At that point, they will wish that not a single dua of theirs was ever responded to. You understand? They'll say, I wish every single time I put my hands up and I ask Allah help me with this calamity, He didn't help me. I wish I suffered more because look at this now. What a great reward this is now. So that's how, if you think of the next life, every calamity, every test shows love from Allah Azza wa Jalla, because you might regret it now, but you won't regret it later. It translates into love later on. You'll see it clearly. So these are just some of those signs of Allah Ta'ala. Yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu
I just have a question in regards to, I don't know if you mentioned it while I was gone, but some of these extremist factions within the Islam who claim that they're Muslim, they say that, okay, all these actions that we're doing are based on Quran, and then they quote this verse, that verse. And to us, this is like, okay, well, we know these verses, but it's not the way that they're translating it to be.
Right.
How do we go about that? And how do we go about if a non-Muslim comes to us and asks us, hey, I saw that on CNN or whatever, I was reading your book and I seen that, explain to me, how should we go about that?
Right. But basically these groups, it's not just like one sign that indicates that they're upon falsehood, right? So they can quote a verse and we say, okay, well, this is how you understood the verse, and we have evidence that goes back, not just because of our desires and whims, but we have evidence that goes back to the scholars, going back to the companions. That's not how they use this verse. But are we just going to find out if they're deviant or not just from how they quote verses? They actually might quote a hadith that's authentic, but they're quoting it out of context, for example, you know? Or they're looking at something in the seerah, but they're not in a similar position. For example, Sheikh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he says that if any time in history Islam starts to resemble the Meccan era, then you should give da'wah just like as the Prophet did in the Meccan era. You understand? In the Meccan era, the Muslims were in the lower position, they were a minority, they were persecuted and defeated, so they gave da'wah in secret and they kept everything hidden because they didn't have the upper hand. Later on during the Medinian era, the Muslims had the upper hand and they could do things differently. So in the Meccan era, the Prophet ﷺ would walk by the houses of Rayat and Humr, which are houses of prostitution, right? He would walk by and see the houses of prostitution in Mecca and not say a word about them. And then in Medina, someone committed zina and they were punished. What happened? What's the difference? The difference in the situation. Now what you have young men who quote Meccan era, but they're in a situation that resembles, they quote Medinian era, but they live in a situation that resembles Meccan. So is it a proper quote? No. So, for example, during the communist era, there were many Muslim countries where obviously, you know, it was outlawed, you could not speak about religion. So they were giving da'wah just like the Meccan era. They were giving it in secret. There was one sheikh in Eastern Europe, and the people were Muslim originally, but they were not allowed to speak about religion. So he was actually off the books. The government didn't have any record of him. And for 40 years, he lived in people's basements. He would move from one house to the next, and nobody knew where he was. And he would teach the family and their children religion, but he did it hidden, just like the Meccan era. But what if a young man walked up to him and said, well, why are you living like this? And the Prophet ﷺ, went out to Badr. Yeah, that was Medina. Different scenario. Anyways, so they might quote something authentic, but they're just using it in the wrong context. They don't understand it properly, because realistically, they don't have scholars with them. They're just a bunch of young guys, they've got no scholars that they refer to, and they're just quoting things just haphazardly like that. And then, I really need that. Then the other issue is that they have other things that indicate that they're not upon the truth. For example, and you know who I'm talking about, right? ISIS, so what? So they say things like, if you're not with us, basically you're against us, and you're off of the manhaj and off of Islam, and a hypocrite, and a scholar of the dollar, and a non-believer, and all these things. The scholars say this type of statement is proof that they're deviant. Because there are many evidences in the Quran and in the Sunnah that show that the believers, it's a collective group that's upon the truth. So whenever a group steps aside and says, we're right and everyone else is wrong, that's proof that they're wrong. Because that's not how Allah described the Ummah. Allah described the Ummah, a lot of it is upon good, and then there's some deviance. But they're reversing that. Anyways, there's a lot of talk about that, but yeah, they can quote as much as they like, but in the end, they're not scholars, and they don't even have scholars that they refer to, and they will quote out of context or with misunderstanding.
Just in general, examples, like in both documents, like they were saying that Allah told me to sell. Even if it's in the Mekki era or in the Medina era, that
Allah told me to sell? Sell what?
Sell the girl. Anything. Basically, you don't see it on the recorded video. And the CNN,
You're like, how much?
He was justification to do what we're doing. But not you have to get rid of saying there's some conflict, something in the context, something in the era, something like that. Is there a justification for that period? There's some of the stuff that
No, the Mecca and Medina are just an example of people misquoting. But no, what's the justification for that? What's the justification? How can you just grab a bunch of girls and sell them as slaves? Oh, Allah said we can sell them. Where is this? And how does someone become a slave? The conditions aren't even there, you know? And who are you? Like maybe you've seen that video of these just, honestly, just a bunch of punk kids in the UK, and they created a halal sharia zone, okay? It's not even your country, and you want to impose a sharia on 5 blocks in the city. And this is one of the biggest problems where Muslims think that they're supposed to bring the sharia to Canada or bring the sharia to the US. Like, where is this? Just show me even a weak hadith that says that. Why would you be obligated to bring the sharia to people who are not Muslim? And what kind of sense does that make? Wouldn't it make more sense to bring Islam to them first? And we used to know a guy like this, and he used to say, we're going to bring the sharia to the United States of America. Okay, why don't you put your efforts in Egypt, for example? It would make sense. Or in Sudan, 90% of people are Muslim. Why don't you go and bring the sharia to Sudan? Most people are Muslim there. Why would you come to the US and try to bring the sharia to the US? It's just so weird, it doesn't make any sense. And this guy thought that someday they're just going to climb on Capitol Hill and then paint that dome green. And some guy's going to make the adhan and turn it into a masjid. You're never ever supposed to bring the sharia to a group of non-Muslims. What for? It doesn't make any sense. And some people are looking at me like, what? No, what? No. What's the proof you're supposed to do that? And you're not even allowed Islamically to implement any aspect of Sharia law without having an Islamic state, meaning it could even be a president, a sultan, an emir, a khalifa. What do I mean by that? Like, for example, someone commits zina in Edmonton. So he goes to his best friend's basement at night. Open up, I need to talk to you. The guy opens up, he's like, I've got a stick here. I need you to whip me 100 times because I committed zina. The guy's like, no man, and I said, don't worry, I'll sign a waiver, I won't sue you. It doesn't matter if you sign a waiver or not. And that's not part of the Sharia, and it's not legitimate. And if your friend does whip you, it doesn't expiate your sin. All that happened to you is your friend whipped you on your back. That's it. You cannot implement the punishments in a non-Muslim country. You can't even get what if I create within Edmonton a section of the city where 500 of the most devout Muslims are going to have a Sharia zone? You can't. It doesn't work like that. You can't have a bunch of guys and the Imam has a form, you sign it, he whip you. You can't do that. It has to be a state. Well, then we will start a state within this. Please don't do this nonsense, okay? It's not part of the deen at all. What you're obligated to do is not spread Sharia law, it's spread Islam. And that's what you have to do. Oh, some people are so naive, wallah. I met some brothers, they're like, oh, and this is true in the Constitution in Texas, because In Texas, they think they're great. So in their constitution, Texas can, at any point, if all Texans decide, they can break away from the United States and be their own country. It's still in their constitution until now. They're never going to do it. But I swear I met some Muslims who were so naive, they're like, you know something? We should intensify our da'wah efforts in Texas, and when everyone in Texas becomes Muslim, we'll vote and break away from the United States. But why did you go to Egypt? You already broke away. They're not even part of the land. Go to Egypt or something, Morocco and they think it does, you know, whoever's the president will be like, yes, they voted, and let them break away. They're not going to do that. They're going to send you planes and tanks and decimate you in 2 seconds. Anyways, so Allah.
Okay, this question was asked at Dawah booth today, that what was the necessity of having different prophets at different times, and why Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was the final messenger? Why not having different messengers at this time?
Okay, excellent. First of all, the reason why there were many prophets sent is due to the fairness of Allah. Allah is so fair, He's not just going to resurrect humanity who never lived on earth and say, okay, this group go to paradise, this group to the hellfire. Why? He needs to send them prophets and warners first to let them know about Him. They have to know about Allah, the do's and don'ts, what He accepts, what He doesn't accept, to warn people that there is a day of judgment. Now, what happened throughout history is that a prophet will come and call his people, and nobody believes in him. So now what about the rest of humanity? Like, this prophet lived for this many number of years, and a few people believed in him, and after his death, his message disappears. It's not fair, right? There's still going to be billions of people who are going to come, so Allah sends them another prophet. And then they might kill that prophet before he even gives the message. He sends them another. They might believe in him, but when he dies, they alter his message. So he sends another and another and another. Then why didn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send the prophet after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The whole idea of sending prophets is to ensure that the truth is available on earth at that time. People distort the truth, we send another prophet to bring the truth, to refresh. They distort it or they kill him, we send another, Allah sends another, and so on and so forth. So why is it that Allah is never going to send a prophet after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Because this time Allah said, His message, the Quran, I'm going to preserve it. So because His message, Allah promised in the Quran, will never be altered, and we know that it has never been altered, there's no reason to send another prophet. So that prophet would basically come and say, I'm a new prophet, read that book. They're like, well, we were already reading it, and we have a tahfidh class and everything. Is like, well, then I'm going to Timmy's. So that's why. Then when someone says, well, why didn't Allah then preserve the message of Nuh? And then, look, in the end, Allah isn't questioned about what He does. Your question, are you going to worship Allah or not? That's the point. Because I can ask you questions about everything, and why was the Prophet, why was his name even Muhammad, and why wasn't it Hassan? Come on now. And you can ask about everything that way. In the end, Allah will do something, and He's not questioning about what He does or the wisdom of what He does. We're questioning about what we're going to do about it. And that's, in a nutshell, a simple answer for that.